Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought, of course, that I would talk about this video and talk about this subject that I thought would be very particularly interesting. And this, of course, is going to be the conversation over Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. If, of course, he's able to get past that of Jaime Munguia this next up and coming weekend, I believe on either May 4th or May 5th, whichever day it is. I can't necessarily remember. But anyways, of course, against the Mexican fighter, who was the former 154-pound champion, who, of course, recently campaigned at the 160-pound weight class, Mr. Jaime Munguia, will be able to see how Canelo Alvarez will match up against that fighter. Of course, most people, including myself, believe that Canelo should be able to get past Jaime Munguia. So that leaves the question, who is he potentially going to face in that of September, or who is going to be his next opponent? And Jermall Charlo has stated that apparently that he plans to be the next opponent for that of Canelo Alvarez in his next fight. Of course, assuming that Canelo gets past that of Jaime Munguia. And of course, I wouldn't really be surprised about that because Canelo, I think, has wanted the Jermall Charlo fight for quite a while. I think that he wanted it back at 160. It just didn't end up happening. And of course, a certain amount of people will say, well, Canelo Alvarez vacated the title. And there was also a time where I believe that Golden Boy and Canelo Alvarez that they offered that of Jermall Charlo a deal, and he turned it down. And then, of course, in the last time when he was supposed to fight Jermall Charlo, it didn't happen, and he had to fight that of Jermall Charlo because Jermall Charlo stated that he was not in the right mental place. And personally, I agree. I don't, I don't think that Jermall Charlo is in a great mental place whatsoever. But we're gonna talk about that, as this video goes along. It's not gonna be a super long video because it's only gonna be a little bit of a short segment. But anyways, let's get into it. Let's see what they both have to say.
Yeah, man, dog, miss you, man. I love you, bro. I got to get out there. You my dog. Like I miss you, dog. Yeah. And then I want you to walk me to the ring when I do fight Canelo, because I'm gonna get my revenge. My brother, he like I'm gonna get the revenge. Yes, sir. I got you. I'm there. Hold on, my bad.
Anyways, Jermall Charlo once again stated that he's going to get revenge for his brother, that of Jermall Charlo. Now, just me taking a look at this, I think that Canelo was very interested in this fight. I think that he's really been interested in a Jermall Charlo fight for a very long time. But of course, it just didn't happen overall for a decently long time. Do I believe that Jermall Charlo will defeat that of Canelo Alvarez? No. I don't think that the best version of Jermall Charlo would have ever defeated Canelo Alvarez. But just taking a look at this, Jermall Charlo, in my view, and I seen him in his last fight against that of Jose Benavidez, who's always pretty much been a gatekeeper anyway. Someone that was eventually going to fight an elite opponent and probably more than likely lose. Of course, the first fighter was Terence Crawford. Then after that, it was Danny Garcia. And then, of course, after that, it was Jermall Charlo. Jose Benavidez is just not an elite level fighter. It is what it is. But anyways, when it comes down to it, once again, there's always a lot of people that within my comment sections, they'll ask me, how can I say that Canelo Alvarez has these multitude of A-grade names on his resume, when overall he doesn't really have that many A-grade names, and it's a little bit overrated. Well, Canelo Alvarez, just in my personal view, he has at least 10 A-grade wins on his resume. He has Austin Trout, when Austin Trout was an undefeated fighter, and he was coming off of the win over Miguel Cotto. So that, I would have to state, was probably his first A-grade level win. Another A-grade level win, probably the second one right after that, would have to be Araceli Lara, which of course was a fight that you could have definitely debated could have went either way. But if you're going to argue in Canelo Alvarez's favor, one could certainly state that Lara could have threw a little bit more throughout that fight, and that maybe the lack of throwing cost him on the scorecards. And of course, Canelo, he's looked at as the golden boy. He's looked at as the cash cow. So of course, he's going to get the edge on the scorecards within that of a lot of fights. But at the end of the day, Lara probably could have threw a little bit more to make sure that that fight was secure. And that was a fight that, in my view, could have went either way. At the end of the day, it went to Canelo Alvarez, and he beat Araceli Lara. And then, of course, after that, I would say Miguel Cotto. Now, of course, a lot of people would state that, oh, Miguel, he wasn't at his absolute peak. He wasn't in his absolute prime. Well, Miguel Cotto may have not been at his absolute peak, when it came to him as a fighter. But if we're really going to go there, Miguel Cotto debatably hasn't really been at his peak, as a fighter, really ever since he debatably lost to Antonio Margarito in the first fight. because he always kind of changes a fighter after that. But of course, I would give, Manny Pacquiao and Floyd Mayweather Jr. the credit of beating a prime Miguel Cotto because he was still a very dangerous fighter. Now, if you want to state that Miguel Cotto was a bit older, you definitely can state that. But Miguel Cotto, by the time that Canelo defeated him, was only about 33 years old. And Miguel Cotto, when he had returned with Freddie Roach, he was looked at as having a complete refurbished career. And Miguel Cotto, overall, once again, at that point in time, he was getting overall certain fighters. He came back, he dominated Delvin Rodriguez, a guy that gave Austin Trout hell in a fight, by the way, the same guy that defeated him. Cotto knocked him out, I believe, within 2 or 3 rounds. That's what ended up happening. And then, of course, he came back and he was able to capture the WBC middleweight title over, probably a over-the-hill Sergio Martinez. But Miguel Cotto looked like a refurbished version of himself. He looked very good. So it wasn't like Miguel Cotto was just this washed-up fighter. No, Miguel Cotto, was still at a very good point. But, of course, Canelo did have the size advantage there, obviously, because Cotto really is not a middleweight. He's really not even a 154-pounder. What Cotto really is a 147-pounder. He's a welterweight guy. But, I still give Canelo credit because Cotto is a very exceptional boxer, even on the technical level. And he was looked at as refurbished. And then, of course, after that, there are certain wins like Gennady Golovkin in the second fight. Of course, people will try to use the excuse that, Gennady was, 36 years old and all this other stuff, right? But just because you're 36 years old doesn't mean that you're still not an A-grade level fighter. Vasily Lomachenko this year is going to turn 36 years old. That doesn't mean that he's not an A-grade level fighter. All right, when it comes down to it, or maybe he already turned 36 or 35, I can't remember, but just because you're at that age doesn't always mean that you're a washed-up fighter. People try to allege that Gennady Golovkin was this washed-up fighter against Canelo. No, Gennady Golovkin was washed up when he faced fighters like Sergey Derevyanchenko and Steve Rolls. Once he changed trainers, and after the 2 wars that he had with Canelo Alvarez, he was never the same after that. He was never the same fighter physically nor mentally. That was when he was washed up. But it's just very particularly interesting, once again, how the LDBC and new media, how they love to use that to their advantage, because they always claim that Gennady Golovkin was washed up without a Canelo Alvarez, and that's why Canelo beat him, and he was waiting for slippage. But then as soon as Sergey Derevyanchenko, the guy that Jermall Charlo ended up dominating, within that fight, they said, can you believe that Jermall Charlo got such a dominant win over Sergey Derevyanchenko, the guy that gave Gennady Golovkin, such a tough run? Gennady was done after those Canelo fights. He was done. There was nothing left to Gennady Golovkin, at least not in terms of an elite fighter. He was nowhere near the same Gennady Golovkin as he once was. All right? But it's interesting because people will fail to mention that. But anyways, and then, of course, you add on Danny Jacobs. You add on Caleb Plant. You add on Billy Joe Saunders. You add on Jermall Charlo. And, of course, Callum Smith, in my view. And there you have about 10 A-grade wins. And some people will say, well, why would you count Plant as an A-grade level fighter? Plant, overall was just this weak European white boy. He really didn't defeat anybody. And I had someone, state that in my comment section. And once again, I can respectfully understand the opinion. But if we're going to play the he didn't fight anyone game, we can do this, with a lot of different level of fighters. We can do if Terrence Bud Crawford defeated Jerron Boots Ennis today, we could just make the excuse and say, he didn't really fight anybody, so how good is Jerron Boots Ennis? Now, of course, I would state that Jerron Boots Ennis is more talented than what a Caleb Plant is. But at the end of the day, Caleb Plant was able to dominate Jose Uzcategui, who is a decently talented fighter. And a PED user, by the way. But, it is what it is. Of course, Plant probably is as well because he's with the snack program. But Caleb Plant, overall, he was able to defeat Jose Uzcategui, when it came down to it. And then, of course, he was able to give David Benavidez a very tough fight. Canelo actually had the better performance of the two between David Benavidez and Caleb Plant. All right, because Benavidez lost about 4 to 5 rounds, in my view, in that fight. At the very least, 4 rounds in that fight against Caleb Plant. Canelo, I think, lost about 3 rounds in that fight to Caleb Plant. And, of course, Canelo was able to stop him. In the Plant fight, of course, the referee was a little bit more involved than probably what he should have been. But David Benavidez wasn't able to knock down Caleb Plant even once. And he was able to give David Benavidez hell. So, once again, this narrative about Caleb Plant allegedly being this bum and this B-grade fighter. No, Caleb Plant, believe it or not, is better and more talented than either Charlo brother. Believe it or not. Believe it or not. Keep in mind that Jermall Charlo lost to a Tony Harrison overall once again that ended up getting chin checked and knocked out in every single big title fight in his career before he fought Jermall Charlo, and still gave Jermall Charlo hell in the rematch. And keep in mind that Jermall Charlo had hell overall with certain fighters like a Matt Korobov, a fight that, to be quite honest with you, he was kind of lucky to get on the decision, at least a unanimous decision. So, once again, the Jermall Charlo brothers, just because they're basically looked at as black American fighters, people really put them on a higher level, but they're not really above that of a Caleb Plant. They're really around the same level. All those fighters are A-minus level fighters. And if you put peak Caleb Plant versus peak Jermall Charlo in the ring, I promise you more than likely that Caleb Plant proves to be the better boxer at the end of the day. Bet you money.
I'll be coming in like all day, all day, all day. Like, come on, dog.
And of course, Billy Joe Saunders, he was looked at as a guy who once upon a time was one of the biggest middleweights in the world and someone that was looked at as a top-tier fighter. Keep in mind, he completely outboxed David Lemieux. Didn't even let him win a single round. He beat that of Chris Eubank Jr., someone who's never been elite, but a solid B-grade level fighter. And, of course, he was able to beat Andy Lee, you know, when he was a champion, someone that ended up getting a draw over the undefeated Peter Quillen at the time. You know, so people try to act like some of these opponents are bums. No, those opponents weren't bums. Now, if you're talking about Rocky Fielding, if you're talking about John Ryder, if you're talking about, you know, Avni Yildirim, those are guys that are not A-grade level fighters. Those are guys that are not A-grade level wins. But Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, no, those guys are A-grade level wins. They were probably A-minus level wins, but they were A-grade wins nonetheless.
But yeah, I'm going to go get the revenge, and then I want you to be there, you know?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm there.
My dog, hit me up whenever you want. Whenever you want. For the rest of your life.
Yes, sir.
You got to pass.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
I just don't trust Jermall Charlo in a Canelo Alvarez fight. To be quite honest with you, I never really trusted Jermall Charlo's boxing ability really in the first place. But Jermall Charlo at this point in time, and you know, the reason why I brought up all of Canelo Alvarez's A-grade wins is because even if Canelo Alvarez were to beat this Jermall Charlo, I'm not quite sure if this would 100% be counted as an A-grade win. I've seen Jermall Charlo in his last fight, and he literally looked like a complete ghost. Like, he looked like a complete shell of himself. He didn't look like a guy that was focused. He didn't look like a guy that, you know, really was really was overall at the best point in time in his career. And of course, he has nowhere near the wear and tear on him that what a Canelo Alvarez does. But Canelo was just way more focused than him. He's way more motivated, you know. And Canelo Alvarez, of course, also is just a decent amount more skilled. It just is what it is. You know, Jermall Charlo, once again, even if the best version of Jermall Charlo showed up against Canelo Alvarez, I don't think that he would have beat him. And Canelo, once again, you don't really know what's going to happen with him because Canelo at this point in time in his career, it could pretty much be a Roy Jones Jr. situation. You know, overall, once again, you know, kind of like when he got knocked out by Antonio Tarver, where he was, you know, just beating basically everybody up, John Ruiz, a certain amount of these other fighters. But you could tell that once he went back down to 175 that there was clear slippage there, that he wasn't the same fighter anymore. And Canelo, when I take a look at him, he looked really good in his last fight against Jermall Charlo, but I mean, that's Jermall Charlo. I mean, a lot of people, of course, made, you know, some conniptions, of course, about the weight. And, of course, Jermall Charlo, you know, he did move up 2 weight classes. Of course, in my view, it was pretty much a natural middleweight versus a middleweight. But, of course, if you want to state the fact that Canelo had the advantage, you know, to a degree because he was used to fighting higher weight class fighters and fighting at a higher weight, you, of course, can state that. But in my view, there's only so much that you can really give that an excuse because Jermall is really not meant to be a 154-pounder. He really should be heavier. And same with Jermall Charlo. Like, he should at least be fighting at 168 pounds. Because he's the exact same size as Jaime Munguia and that of Caleb Plant and some of those other fighters. Like, he's exactly their same size.
Hey, shit, man, I'm finna get back in here with the kids, man.
And like I stated, you know, that was a great win, but I expected Canelo to look that great against Jermall Charlo. I already knew that he was coming in there for the payday anyway. He wasn't really going to try to win that fight. You could tell overall the way that he was just bowing down to Canelo Alvarez at the press conference, basically, and acting like a little puppy. You know, usually, and I always state this, when boxers all of a sudden out of nowhere, you know, when they, you know, completely change character, like when you see a fighter all of a sudden that usually talks a lot of shit, and they're not talking shit anymore, that's a red flag. Like when Deontay Wilder, in the Tyson Fury trilogy, he's usually this very boisterous guy with this boisterous attitude and overall, so, for my people and all this sort of stuff. But then he completely changed demeanors. That's when I knew that Tyson Fury was majorly in his head. That's when you know that someone overall is not really in the right state of mind to probably win a fight, at least at times. At least at times. And Jermall Charlo, when I take a look at him and Jermall, I mean, Jermall is just not anywhere near really on the same skill level as Canelo Alvarez. So the weight probably, of course, was a slight advantage for Canelo Alvarez because he was used to fighting guys that were bigger, of course. But Jermall, he did rehydrate heavier than Canelo. Keep that in mind, but it wasn't really going to matter because Jermall Charlo's skill set, and Canelo's not really at his best anymore. Canelo is pretty much at about 85% of what he really used to be. Canelo is no longer at his peak right now. He's kind of like LeBron James a few years ago with the LA Lakers, or a couple years ago with the LA Lakers, where he's still a very dominant player, but he's not really the same, best player in the league type of guy. It's the same thing. Canelo Alvarez right now, he's starting to overall knock on the door in terms of retirement. So it's going to get close overall to that, and I think that Canelo Alvarez knows that. So in my personal view, Canelo Alvarez, more than likely what his plan is, I think that he's going to fight Jaime Munguia, and in his case, hopefully beat Jaime Munguia and then beat Jermall Charlo if they face. And I think after that, he might take a look possibly at the light heavyweight class. And I think he might look to see who possibly is going to get the light heavyweight undisputed titles. That's what I believe that he's going to try to do. And I think that he's going to try to possibly become undisputed light heavyweight champion. And whether he wins or loses, now, of course, if he wins in dominant fashion, then, of course, he might stay around a little bit. But I think that might be Canelo Alvarez's last fight. I think that Canelo, I think he's going to wait to see who's going to come out in the top tier of that weight class between Artur Beterbiev, Dimitri Bivol, and David Benavidez. That is what I believe his next plan is. And whoever ends up, being, decent at that weight class, or who ends up becoming the unified champ, I think that Canelo more than likely will fight them. And then I think that's pretty much going to be it for Canelo. I don't think that Canelo really plans to be around boxing much longer. I could be wrong, but we'll see.
Do your thing. Do your thing. I can't see my kids right now, but do your thing. Y'all hit me up. I'm not, man. Ain't nothing wrong. But why they think something wrong with Ma? Ma just been working. Yeah. All I've been doing is working. Yeah.
You've been working your ass into retirement, Jermall. Just stop that shit. This dude overall has been caught in certain areas drunk, high as hell. And, he has the nerve overall to state that, he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke. Bullshit, dude. Like I said, Jermall Charlo is a complete shell of what he used to be. And I don't think that the best version of Jermall, I don't think that Jermall Charlo on his absolute best night, even with a little bit of extra sauce, would have beat overall probably 85% Canelo. But at the end of the day, Jermall Charlo, I don't see him as a guy that, in my view, at the current moment in time, would be an A-grade fight. But Canelo, I believe, is going to take the fight because I think he's highly interested in it. I think he believes that a lot of people would be interested in it. I would really hope that Jermall Charlo at least puts up somewhat of a fight. That way it can be somewhat intriguing. But I don't think that Jermall Charlo, I don't think that he's at that place anymore. I mean, mentally, he's just completely gone. Like ever since, I believe, his divorce or, that argument overall with his woman, Jermall Charlo has been done for. He's been completely stripped overall of any of his ability, which is very unfortunate, but unfortunately that happens. But anyways, there really isn't much else to comment about this video. I just thought that I would talk about that because, of course, there is a plan, for Canelo Alvarez, I believe, and I think that he plans to fight Jaime Munguia next and then Jermall Charlo. And, of course, the David Benavidez fight is the fight that everybody wants to see. But I think that Canelo Alvarez, I think that he plans, probably to fight the winner of that little triangle at the light heavyweight class. That is, of course, if David Benavidez is even going to fight the winner of Dimitri Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev, which it sounds like Benavidez, might. We'll have to see on that, And, of course, that's not me stating whatsoever that Canelo should not fight David Benavidez, even if Benavidez is not fighting those guys. But at the end of the day, I do believe that that's what Canelo Alvarez's plans are. We'll see overall what ends up happening. But anyways, this is pretty much about it for this video. I just thought that it was interesting. Will Jermall Charlo be able to, kick it in gear and really put up an A-grade fight against Canelo? I highly doubt it. He looked like a complete shell of himself in that last fight. He just looked like he had very limited boxing ability. He looked like he was pretty much just going through the motions. But because Jose Benavidez had never fought at that weight class before, and on top of that, Jermall Charlo. Oh, keep in mind, Jermall Charlo also missed the weight by 6 pounds. But there was never any talk about overall how there was cheating there. Very interesting. But anyways, when it comes down to, Jermall Charlo, he just looked completely done in that fight, honestly. But it is what it is. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for this video. We'll see overall where this goes. I hope that, that Jermall Charlo, that if the fight does happen, that it's, that he definitely trains his ass off and that he comes at the best version of himself. But I don't know if we're ever going to see that Jermall Charlo again. But we'll see what happens. But anyways, that's pretty much about it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll talk to you all later.